Friends, welcome to the Decentralized Health Podcast and to episode number 4. Today's guest is Dr. Kelsey Dexter. She's an endocrinologist and herbalist dedicated to transforming lives through a unique approach that blends modern medical science with the principles of vitalism. With a focus on improving hormonal and overall health, Dr. Dexter employs a circadian and metabolic wellness framework that addresses the root causes of various health issues. She discusses all of this in the podcast, as well as how she transitioned from centralized medicine into decentralized medicine, how she applies these circadian and quantum biological principles with her young children, as well as with her clients. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Decentralized Health Podcast and to Kelsey Dexter.
I have some great anecdotes, like from patients who I couldn't control their diabetes for years and years, and they finally got their bodies in the sunshine. Mm-hmm. And, the next time I see them, their A1C is down 2 whole points.
Kelsey, we're live. How are you, my darling? I hope you're well.
Feeling great. Happy to be here. Thanks so much.
I'm so happy. Oh, my pleasure. I'm so happy to have you here. The audience are in for an absolute treat. But before we start, I know we briefly touched about this off camera, but I would love you just to mention this beautiful necklace you have around your neck. It's stunning.
Oh, yeah. So this is a biogeometry pendant. And I think you actually know more about this than I do.
I do. I do. But for anybody that's going to look at that necklace and be like, I wonder what that is, I thought I'd cover that instantly because that's where my attention got drew.
Yeah.
that is biogeometry. That is Ibrahim Karim. So if anybody wants to kind of Google search that, you're more than welcome. But if you want to go really deep into it and have a little bit more understanding, Paul Check is the gentleman that we were discussing before we recorded. So you can just go and listen to his previous podcasts with Ibrahim Karim, and you'll better find all about that, because biogeometry is very, very special. And I think it needs to be more in the mainstream. But that aside, I just want to say, everybody, welcome Kelsey Dexter to the show. Kelsey, I met Kelsey on the Solar Culture Retreat in El Salvador, and she was very kind and lovely and spoke to me about all the things that she loves to do and all things quantum. And I thought, who better to have on the podcast to talk about these things than Kelsey? So, my darling, please start your hero's journey from the beginning, introduce yourself, what you do, and then we can start and kind of transition from there.
Absolutely. Well, from a very young age, I've been sort of on that healer's journey. I always knew that I wanted to be a healer of sorts or a practitioner. Mm-hmm. And I decided I was going to be a doctor by the time I was 5. Wow. So my entire young adult life, I was trying really hard in school and like doing the best I could just so I could get into medical school. And I took that traditional allopathic Western medicine route, went to obtain my MD. I ended up doing endocrinology and getting into, metabolism work. But along the way, medical education is very rigorous and it's very punishing. And so all through medical school, we're asked, well, the medical students are the runts, right? So we have to be at the hospital before the interns, before the residents, to pre-round. And sometimes on rotations, that might mean showing up at 3 a.m, right? Wow. So those years of late night studying, early morning rounds, clinical training are really, really hard on bodies and spirits. Yep. So it continues all through residency and fellowship, but thankfully there are some guidelines, some standards that were put in for residents' well-being in the last 10 years that sort of changed the amount of time we had to spend in the hospital. But if you want to talk about the most extreme type of circadian disruption, I was there, right? Staying up for 36-hour shifts and getting to go home for 8 hours before coming back to the hospital again to round the next day. I would fall asleep standing up in the corners of rooms, talking to patients, fall asleep driving all the time, felt horrible. And let's see, we went, 4 years of med school, 3 years of residency, and a year of chief residency, and then 2 more years of endocrinology fellowship where we're slave to pagers and not getting good rest. So that took a toll on my health overall. Of course, I think it does for many physicians, and we power through. But along with that, I was sort of born with this innate fear of sunshine. I cannot explain. But my family knows this well about me, that from the time I could make my own decisions, I was putting sunscreen all over my skin, head to toe, every time I went outside.
Wow.
So I spent my entire life being as sun avoidant as possible, in combination with having the worst circadian health in my adult years that is imaginable.
Wow.
And, about 4 years ago, I started having really, really strange sensations in different nerves in my body. So my left foot started having this weird heating flush sensation, and I would walk across the carpet, feel like I stepped in water and there was nothing there. And then I started having shooting pains in my leg, and I would wash my face and run across my facial nerve and feel like shooting pain across my face. And it was all really concerning. And being a physician and knowing what I know and knowing my demographic, I was very concerned for MS, right? I thought for multiple sclerosis. And when I went to my doctor and told him about the symptoms I was having, he pretty much validated me and said, you're in your mid-30s and female, and this nervous system issues, and you're a highly stressed individual. This was during the height of COVID also. And I was a mom to 2 little bitty kids. So still not resting, not sleeping, and very concerned about the state of the world and external pressures on me, whether or not I was going to get sick and bring this home to my family because I'm still working, many, many things, many contributors. But he asked me if I wanted to get imaging and nail down the diagnosis, because typically, you get MRIs and look for these lesions that can confirm. And I said, no, thank you. Because I knew that whatever we found, it wasn't going to change what I was going to do. Right. And I didn't want that diagnosis on my chart or to follow me the rest of my life. So I just started diving into the research and looking at everything I could in regard to multiple sclerosis. And of course, the first papers that I come across describe how the incidence of MS is minimal at the equator, and it rises progressively with latitude. So the further away you get from the equator, the more people have this condition. And I thought about my life and sun and vitamin D, and I thought, well, you dummy, you did this to yourself. You need the sun. Yeah. So the first thing that I did is I just started reintroducing myself to sunshine. And I was so pale, no melanin. Okay. I'd done that on purpose over the years, and I had no solar callus, and I would burn if I sat outside for 30 seconds in a high UVI, so I thought that I was sun sensitive. Yeah. And I believe it was March. So it was kind of the ideal time to start acclimating to the sun when I started training myself. But I used the D-Minder app and put in all these parameters for my fit factor skin type and use that as guidance. And I would sit out in the mornings to start for, whatever D-Minder told me I could do. So usually that was 10 to 20 minutes. And I think it took maybe a week before I noticed I was sleeping more deeply. And then my mood was better. And then after about 3 weeks, all of my nervous system symptoms went away in just 3 weeks. And I knew that I had touched on something really, really important that had been completely avoided this topic in my training, right? No one had ever told me in Western medicine training that I needed the sun. In fact, they say the opposite, that the sun is dangerous, that there's no safe tan, to avoid high UVI, right? And protect yourself. So this was really confusing to me overall. And I started looking into other literature about how the sun interfaces with physiology, and I found out how much it influences hormonal health. And this is what I do, right? I'm an endocrinologist. And I really believe at this point that there's no greater external signal that controls our hormonal health than our light environment. And how was this missed from my education? But so I think around that time too, I discovered Jack Krus's work, which took me down the rabbit hole of light water magnetism, which I'm still drowning there, right?
Definitely.
Trying to learn as much as I can about how our environment shapes physiology. But you know, bring me back to today. I'm 40. I feel better than I did when I was a teenager. Thriving, vital, you know, and I try my best to teach this to patients that I see. But I still work in this centralized. Well, I sort of have a dual practice, but my main day job is a centralized endocrinologist in a semi-rural area of Tennessee. So I see a lot of horrible diabetes and metabolic issues. And I get 20 minutes with every patient. So my challenge—
20 minutes?
Yeah, 20 minutes, which actually is twice as much as the average physician gets with a patient.
100%. I was about to say, because GPs, doctors in the UK, they get 9 minutes on average.
They get what, 9?
9.
Wow. Yeah. And this is not— it's not the doctor's fault, right?
No,
we're stuck in a system that pays per face seen instead of for the job done. So whenever you work for big systems that have administrators who know that the more faces you see, the more money they make, they crack the whip and say you have to see 30 to 60 people a day, and it's impossible to give the kind of care that individuals need to educate in that amount of time. So most physicians are just trying to keep their heads above water and doing the best they can with the time that they have, and most of them are burnout this whole process. So I'm trying to figure out a way to do the best by every person involved to have good work-life balance, to help people change their lives little bits at a time. Thankfully for me, the people that I interface with, I have long-term relationships with. So I may see my patients with diabetes every 3 months. So I get to talk about a little different, from a different viewpoint, different vantage point, new little nuggets of information every time I see them. But I do recognize also that the rate of type 2 diabetes has increased dramatically over the last 20 years. And when, everybody sort of relates this to food and our food quality. But I really believe it's a bigger story than that.
I do.
And we know that circadian disruption has a very clear association with insulin resistance, with obesity, with incidence of diabetes. And ever since that LED backlit phone was invented, I think the iPhone was the first one, right, in about 2006 or 2007, we've seen the health of children decline even more rapidly. And all kids love to eat crap. I've got 2 little kids. They don't get it. They would love to eat Pop-Tarts. They would love to eat cereal, Fruit Loops, and, red dye candy and all these things. And I remember when I was little, I ate those things.
Yeah, I did too.
And maybe the ingredients were slightly different, but I don't remember anyone in my entire school having type 2 diabetes or fatty liver. And I don't remember my classmates being obese. Right? So we have to be looking for a different variable here.
Exactly.
And, that's the big shift that's happened in our population over the last 20 years. It hasn't been our food, it's been our light.
Yep.
And the absence of darkness.
Yep.
Really. Yeah.
Yep. 100%. And I think what we've seen is the increase in the use of blue lit technology, which has driven the increase in time spent indoors, because we no longer go outside to play. We go on our phones to play, right? So you don't go out and play football anymore as a kid, you play FIFA. You don't go outside and meet people and, I don't know, like go on a walk and a date or whatever, you go on Tinder. Like everything has moved from outside to inside because of devices like what we're looking at right now, which are encouraging that very myopic, singular focused view of the world, where it's literally just, here's me and here's how I interface with the entire world. It's very, there was a film, which is very hard to find nowadays, called Surrogate with Bruce Willis. I don't know if you've ever seen that film. See, most people have never seen this film. It's like it's hidden. Everybody please watch that film.
I'm taking a note.
It's called Surrogates, Surrogate or Surrogates. And basically what happens in this film, I'm not going to tell you the whole thing, I'm just going to tell you like the premise of it all. Human beings now sit in pods and they have AI versions of themselves, exactly the same as them, but just younger. So they're in the AI bots are in their 20s, their height of health, I guess. And the humans are sick, fat, aged, all sat in these pods in their house. They don't leave their rooms. So like Bruce Willis is married in this film. His wife's in one room, he's in the other room. Their AI bot is in a wardrobe and they just sit in there, put this thing on, and then they're in this bot. And they basically go out in the world and exist through this surrogate.
Oh.
Well, take away the fact that these are moving AI robots and just replace that with an iPhone or any smartphone or any tablet. That's basically what's happening. We are giving our power to these devices where we're not doing the same things anymore. And I think not COVID, I'll rephrase that. I think lockdown exacerbated that way more because they locked everybody away and said, right, well, now you can only communicate this way. And over a 2-year period, somehow that altered the way that everybody related to each other. People don't go out as much anymore. People don't socialize the way that they used to socialize anymore. Everything is a lot more digital. And so I think you're quite right there, like going back to your original point where you've got this influx of blue screen, which as we know is creating a low dopamine state. It's changing all these hormonal changes in the body, raising cortisol, blood sugar, all these things permanently throughout the day as we're staring at them, whether it's morning or evening. Then adding in the fact that we're not getting the stimulus of light outside as much as we used to when we were younger. Plus, we're not as socially connected as we used to be anymore. This is also going to be a driver of neurological problems because it's going to cause more depressive actions and anxiety, social. Like I was listening to this guy was talking about this the other day. He interviewed one of the leading like students at like Stanford or something. And he was interviewing for this incredible job. And when he read the CV, he was blown away by this kid and was like, I need to hire him. Brought him in for an interview, and the kid was basically like dumb, like just couldn't communicate. And so the guy said to him, like, you don't match what I read on your CV. And he said, oh yeah, no, ChatGPT wrote that. He said, wow. I'm using AI so much, I'm finding it difficult to socialize now. And when I listened to that, I was like, holy crap, like that's where it's going. Like AI, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's extrapolating and magnifying this very, very real problem of too much of technology and not enough social connection, not enough outsideness, not enough all those things. And it all links back to, as you say, 2007, 2008, where Apple, I worked for them at the time, released the iPhone. And it wasn't even their main product launch. The Apple TV was the main product launch at that day. The iPhone was just this subsidiary thing. But from that moment, everything changed. So my question to you then would be, as a mum who's now got this knowledge, and as you rightly say, kids want to eat crap, they do, and kids will just copy other kids. Mm-hmm. How do you find the conversations and the things that you have with your kids? Obviously, I know they're quite young, but like, how do you move around this area as a mum with this incredible knowledge? Like, how do you influence your kids in that way, in a favorable way, which doesn't make them completely isolated from society, because they're not the ones that go out and do what normal kids do?
I have a fear of that, to be honest, of creating a situation where they're ostracized because of the way that we live. Mm-hmm. But I believe that parents should respect their kids and teach their kids, and not force behavior without explanation. Mm-hmm. So I really, really try, first of all, to set an example. So they see me walk outside as soon as I get up and see the sun, and they love to come with me. Right. Aww. So that's not a struggle. They understand that the sun is important for health. Mm-hmm. We talk about it all the time, and they like to be outside. And I think they can tell a difference in the way that they feel when they get outside time. So that reinforces that behavior. We have very strict rules about screen time in our house. So my boys love Nintendo. It just kills me, right? But they love it so much. And they have to earn Nintendo time with good behavior. And right now, they have to not fight or argue for 24 hours before they can have any time on the Nintendo. Wow. And they haven't been able to achieve that for 2 weeks. So, but we of course have blue light blocking glasses. So they know that if they play, they will willingly put on their glasses. Mm-hmm. I have modified all of our lighting in our home at this point, like little by little, so that we don't have blue light when the sun is down, except for one television in the house. So if we watch TV at night, everybody wears their glasses, and we don't do that very often. The boys' TV upstairs, I have wrapped in a blue light blocking film. So if they go upstairs and they turn it on and I don't know, at least they have this little modicum of protection.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was a thing.
It is, yeah.
Okay, you need to share that with me. I don't have that, and I don't watch much TV anyway, but I would love to have the option. So I think, share that when we finish. You can share the link with
Sure, yeah. There are a couple different companies that make products like that, but yes, I've done everything I can to protect them in their environment. And then I educate them frequently. And, my youngest is in kindergarten, and his kindergarten teacher contacts me pretty frequently to tell me the things that he has told her. And he educates her routinely about blue light and what it does to the brain.
Love it.
Yeah, it's so funny. And, she had a sore throat the other day, and she said he very sincerely went up to her and said, you should come over to our house after school and use my mom's red light.
Oh, bless.
Red light therapy. He said it really helps.
Oh, bless.
So, it's really, really sweet. I don't find it hard at all. I don't find it difficult to sort of encourage good circadian habits with kids. And I have to say, like, before I had this knowledge and we implemented these changes, I would literally have to wrestle these kids to bed at night. I like lie between them and read them a book every night. And my 5-year-old would be like doing headstands against the wall, like talking and trying his best to stay up. And it would be an hour of wind down. And these days, like, I can barely finish a book and they're both asleep. Right. And we all go to sleep at the same time. Like around between 8 and 8:30 p.m. We all get up at 6 a.m. No alarm clock every day.
Wow.
So I think it's really cool when you can sleep train your family, right? Circadian train your family, and we're all on the same schedule. Now, it means that I don't get a lot of solo mom time, but that's okay, because my priority these days from a health standpoint is sleep.
Of course.
Yeah. So we are melatonin maxing in the wintertime, right? So we get lots of family sleep.
Love it.
Yeah.
You do realize you're about to get a load of parents reaching out to you, being like, right, teach us your ways, Kelsey. How did you circadian and train your children? That's going to, I think maybe you might be writing a book or a course for it. I think that's going to be a little side hustle for you.
Well, it wasn't me, it's the environment.
Yep.
So like, you just have to shift the environment to let neurotransmitters and hormones do what they do when you're exposed to sunlight, when you're exposed to darkness, and it just happens naturally. But, there are individuals that have innate sleep issues that are pathological. There are other circumstances, medicines that mess up these pathways. There are all kinds of different scenarios. So it's not always so easy. But I've met people that have told me, patients that have told me that they've never been able to sleep their entire lives, right? Quote unquote, that they're just not good sleepers. They can get by with 5 hours a night. That's how they feel best. And whenever they really start working on their light and dark environment, they start sleeping 8-9 hours a night for the first time in their entire lives. And it changes their lives because they feel so much better than they ever have. We have to have these periods of deep sleep and high melatonin levels at night to repair, heal, detox, get rid of, abnormal cells, misfolded proteins, to optimize. And in American culture, this is just so underemphasized. People, this quote, "I'll sleep when I'm dead." I hate this, right? And our entire culture is built on productivity, and every business needs to be open, 24 hours, all these factories. And so we have a huge percentage of the population that does shift work here. And far and away, the sickest people with the worst metabolic disease that I interface with in clinic are shift workers. Yes.
100%.
Miserably sick. Most everybody, especially I have, people that have been working nights for 30 years. Can you imagine? But we have to do better as a society to emphasize the importance of foundational health, right? And sleep is the cornerstone. It is. Light and sleep and hydration and nourishment and love and movement. They're all important. But you can, work out every day. You can eat a pristine diet. And if you don't sleep, you don't repair. So I usually try to start with light. If I meet somebody new in the office and we have a long way to go, so there are some dietary principles that I think every person with diabetes should be paying attention to, like you don't drink liquid sugar when you have diabetes, right? And we prioritize protein, fat, and fiber at mealtime. And so I go over some of these basic things, but in general, try to not be overwhelming and try to relay the importance of getting morning light and evening darkness to metabolic health to every person.
100%.
I have some great anecdotes, like from patients who I couldn't control their diabetes for years and years, and they finally got their bodies in the sunshine. And, the next time I see them, their A1C is down 2 whole points. And, a particular lady I'm thinking of had chronic pancreatitis, and she, weighs 85 pounds and can't gain a pound, and her stomach hurts every time she eats, and she can't eat, and she has diabetes. And I remember when she started sitting in the sun, I saw her 3 months later, and her diabetes was controlled, and she'd gained 15 pounds and no longer had stomach pain, right? So sometimes that one little shift, it's not really little, it's just easy to me. It's easy. The shift of adding natural full spectrum light to your environment can shift so much physiology that it changes everything, right? It's not always that simple, but it can be. So it's not always simple in necessarily practice or time, but it's simple in its logic. Like, we are outdoor mammals who live a 90% indoor existence. What's the missing piece? Right? Like, it's not difficult to see when you look at it from that 30,000 foot view. It's like, okay, so
what's been added and what's been taken away. Okay, so lots of technology and lots of blue light have been added. Natural light, natural connection with the earth, fresh air, and complete darkness have been taken away. Mm-hmm. But then when you say this to patients and to clients, and you say to them, because I have this conversation like with a lot of clients of mine, and particularly like my dad. My dad's not, okay, how can I word it? My dad's body has the symptomologies of type 2 diabetes. And all the stuff that he's been told by his doctors goes against what I recommend to him. Mm-hmm. And he fights me for his limitations, which is very frustrating, because I say to him, you can either have results or reasons. You can't have both. And if what you're doing with your doctors isn't working, how long are you going to keep doing that before you realize that you are swimming upstream, when you could literally just below the bear this and lay on your back and let the river take you? Like, you don't have to fight this hard. It doesn't have to be complicated. We make it complicated. And when you suggest things to somebody like, I'll just go outside and sunrise. No, it can't be that simple. Give me a pill instead. No. If pharma could bottle sunlight and bottle sleep, it would be a gazillion-dollar business.
Absolutely.
But they can't. And so they will do all that they can to take you away from all of that, so that way then they can sell you all the pills and stuff that they've got. Because if you have sunlight and you have sleep, most of the things that they're giving you pills for are going to become redundant. So if you can do those things and take the power back, well, then all of a sudden you're in charge. That sovereignty is yours. Mm-hmm. And I think just people they're so used to it being convenient and complicated that when you suggest something so simple, their initial reaction is, nope, not doing it. It won't work. It's too woo-woo. It's too woo. It's like, no, it's not at all. It's very simple.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So my question to you, going back to your story, obviously your time in the hospital and working like that seems horrendous. And I'm not going to speak for any medical professional here, but the NHS here is just as bad, where they're working day upon day upon day upon day upon day, lack of sleep, which would then obviously give lack of critical thinking, as with all the blue light that they're under and stuff like that. Like, what was one of the first things you noticed when you started to dial all those things in? What were some of the things that you'd probably taken or not noticed that you'd lost from a performance perspective or cognitive functional perspective? What was one of those moments where you thought, hang on, this is actually working. I feel like this, or I look like this now?
I'll have to say probably I noticed mental clarity first. And I existed in this perpetual state of brain fog. Yep. And I just thought that was my normal state, and could barely, string words together some days. And I found that it was just this clarity came to me that I'd never had before. And that's probably, my brain cleaning itself every night. That's what needed to happen. Yes, I definitely noticed that. I honestly, over time, feel like I'm aging in reverse.
Yes.
Too, because I could show you a picture of what I look like 10 years ago and you wouldn't recognize me.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think so. And many patients that I see that, haven't seen me in a year or two and come back, they don't know who I am.
Wow.
So wow. It's really, really sort of strange and incredible. But
well, having met you obviously in person, I when you're telling me your age, I still can't believe it. I'm like, no, can't be way younger than that. But obviously I'm the same as you. I'm 44. And I still get people saying the same thing, like, you look younger now than what you did when you were in your like late 20s. I'm like, yeah, I know. It just works. Like, I remember having this conversation with Jeff in El Salvador, like just the way the body composition changes, the way that the body recovers after training and sleep, and how our skin starts getting better, our vision starts getting better, our hair starts getting thicker, the gray starts to go away, our nails are stronger, like all these things that we consider just part of aging. Well, maybe when you're in your 80s, but when you're in your late 30s, early 40s, you shouldn't be getting these things. You should still be vibrant. You should still be ready to rock and roll. Like, there should be nothing going on where you could be like, okay, that's aging. You're right. Because if we think back to our parents, when they were our age, my mum and dad were like rocking it at that age. Like they were still fit and strong and healthy and everything. And there was no illnesses or anything that they had. It's only once they've got into their 70s now that they're getting those 70s ailments to a degree. Actually, my mum's not. My mum's basically superhuman. But I was thinking, it has to be the fact that so much has changed over time.
Yeah. And we look around us and see our peers who are also declining, right? Who also have aches and pains, who are getting gray, who are their skin's starting to age. They're taking medicine for chronic conditions. And we think, oh yeah, this is normal. But it's not normal. It's just common.
Exactly. Yes. I say this all the time. Just because it's common, it's not. Just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal at all. Right? It's just one of those things that we kind of take, because doctors are all the time saying, oh yeah, that's just normal. Oh yeah, you're pre-diabetic. That's normal. Ugh. No, it's really not. it's really not a normal thing, particularly now when you're getting, like, as you say, like child onset diabetes. That's not normal. Right. Children with fatty livers, that's not normal. And quite morbidly obese children, that is not normal. That is, again, society, unfortunately. And the one thing I was actually going to bring back, because obviously your focus on metabolic health and all the rest of it, I want to dive into there. But the endocrinology side of things, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've seen this with a lot of clients, women that are coming to me early 30s, mid 30s, who are perimenopausal already. Like that seems to be the same way that a lot of young lads in their mid 20s are coming to me with testosterone, the same as a 4-year-old boy. I'm getting women in their early 30s coming to me who are perimenopausal. And you're like, that's not right. That shouldn't be happening. Are you seeing this as well? Absolutely.
Like with increasing frequency every year, I'll tell you. I see, first of all, a lot of young men with low testosterone, and I see a lot of women who are perimenopausal and younger than I am. Interestingly, like I have coached a lot of these patients, clients, through circadian regulation into normal levels again. But I have a close friend who is not a patient. She's in my book club. And she's in her late 40s and was perimenopausal. And, you know, we say that this is quote unquote normal because from age 45 to 55-ish, average age 51 for menopause. And so she didn't think much about this, but she's been influenced by our little friend group and started working really hard on circadian habits. And she started having a monthly cycle again. She hadn't had one in a year. I thought she was postmenopausal, right? Whoa. Yeah. So this happens regularly to people that think that their hormones are done. So I just can't imagine how the hormonal health of our society would shift if our circadian habits were emphasized and really prioritized.
Yeah. So for the people watching and listening, what is the relationship between natural light and hormone production? So what is it that's causing this disruption?
So I really believe it's probably related to leptin, because especially female bodies in particular are very, very sensitive to stress signals, right? Because if we look at our ancestors and the female body's job of carrying a baby, reproduction, a female body wouldn't want to conceive in a scenario that's not safe for a baby's survival. And so whenever we send signals to the body that we are not safe, it impacts our leptin sensitivity. So what is leptin? Leptin is a hormone that is made by white adipose storage tissue that is effectively the energy accountant of the body, right? So leptin's job is to dock in the hypothalamus while we sleep at night and let the brain know how much energy reserve we have. And for optimal health, optimal hormonal health, we women need a certain amount of body fat percentage, the right amount, the sweet spot. And when the brain can see that stored energy, that's a safety signal that says we have enough energy to make it through some degree of famine. And so we have enough energy to increase our metabolic rate, to grow hair, to ovulate, to increase body temperature, right? Increase nail growth. We have extra energy to spend. Whenever the brain can't see that energy levels are robust, adequate, then all of those systems downregulate to conserve energy, and fertility is included in that. This is why we see stressful situations like females who are performance athletes, for instance, who are putting a lot of physical stress on their bodies may lose their cycle, right? Yep. Or women who are studying for exams, who are really, really stressed about some kind of outcome, will skip a period. So there's this kind of short-term feedback loop that says, if I'm not safe, there's no ovulation and hormonal levels drop. And then there's also a long-term effect of being leptin resistant, the body not being able to see that we have the right scenario for optimal conception and carrying a baby. So what do we know also about leptin regulation? That it's very circadian driven, right? So leptin is highly influenced by cortisol, which is also a very circadian driven hormone. We know cortisol has diurnal secretion, and it rises in the morning about the time that the sun comes up, and its job is to wake us up and get us moving. And we are not meant to have, it's also a stress hormone. So it rises in times of acute and chronic stress. And we are not meant to have high levels of cortisol all the time. It's supposed to drop to zero at night, in fact, while we're sleeping. And so whenever we have these different stimuli that raise cortisol all day long, which blue light is the one I think of primarily, the body never gets a break from that signal. That causes the body to be resistant to the leptin signal. So I kind of consider the three master hormones that control most other systems to be leptin, cortisol, and melatonin. And all three of these hormones are directly influenced by our light and dark environment. So to get online and optimized, the first step is to get the right light in the morning, right? Morning sunlight, to avoid blue light toxicity and to avoid artificial light at night. So those three behaviors tend to make everything downstream better, including reproductive hormones. Metabolism too, obviously, but so those two things go hand in hand. Amazing.
Thank you for that description, my darling. And just something that I've been looking into a lot recently is, and I know this seems to impact women a lot more than it does men, is something called pregnenolone-Steele syndrome. So because I know pregnenolone obviously gets released from the mitochondria, and I'm assuming that's happened. Does that happen at sunrise or at UVA rise?
Mitochondrial production of pregnenolone, I'm not actually sure when it happens. I
think it's either sunrise or UVA. I can't remember which one it is, but I also know that's when you're going to get that pregnenolone-Steele syndrome. Is if you don't get that right signal, the body's going to take the pregnenolone to use it for cortisol production, right? Is that right?
Right. So pregnenolone is sort of the first stage of hormone production for many other downstream hormones. So if you have this amount of pregnenolone you can spend on different hormone production in the body, it can either be shuttled through reproductive hormones or cortisol down the steroidogenesis pathway. There's some other ones too, but in general, that's how it goes.
Okay. So obviously, if we're getting the wrong stimulus of light, which, as you say, the blue light's going to increase cortisol production, we're going to be taking that pregnenolone and producing cortisol, which means it's going to be coming away from every other steroidal hormone that would normally be made.
Right.
Perfect. Understood. That now makes sense to me. All right. That's perfect. That's perfect. So when it came to your move from I don't want to say move because I know you're still within that centralized system, but when it came to your work with your patients, how did you make that transition from that centralized to that decentralized approach?
So I didn't go into this earlier, but I actually have two different practices.
Okay.
So on my days off, I have a decentralized clinic that I run in Nashville, Tennessee. So it's a couple hours away from me. And patients that find me for that clinic are the ones who are ready to make these kind of shifts. And they are amazing. And it's so rewarding. And I get so much time with them compared to what I do in my centralized practice. Here's my issue, though. Like, if the patients that I interface with in the centralized practice won't hear this from anybody else.
No.
And I take care of a panel of about 2,000 people, right? And every person that I influence there is going to influence somebody else downstream, someone who's connected to them, their family members, et cetera. And I feel this obligation to serve those people that couldn't see me in the other clinic, right? Either because of logistics or money involved or whatever. So I am trying to do my best for both populations. And I'm really, really lucky. I work in this multi-specialty private practice here that's really unique. So my practice has about 100 physicians that are all sort of co-owners. And so we elect our board from within ourselves, and we self-govern, and we self-administrate. And we also make our own schedules, and that affects our pay structure, et cetera. But we have a lot of autonomy in our own clinics. So it's really, really special. And I have sort of set up my days so that I have the latitude to do a little bit of teaching in every visit, right? And it might be handouts that I give to patients. It's usually direct verbal communication and answering questions. I also have a school group, SKOOL, right? An online platform where a lot of my patients who are interested in this. So if I say something to them that piques their interest, they will join the school group. And I have a lot of pre-recorded talks that they can access, and then they can ask questions specifically about circadian and quantum health in that group. So, and I make myself more accessible to them than I do the average patient, because I want to help those who want to help themselves. And I am trying to find pathways to make that accessible and affordable. Yeah,
100%. So you actually just mentioned something there, which we haven't differentiated and made them individual, but also the fact that they're together. Is obviously there is circadian biology, and then there's quantum biology. So how do you, when you're speaking, whether you're thinking about it yourself or whether you're talking to your patients about this, how do you define the difference between the two? Because they can be interchangeable.
They can. Well, I think that circadian biology influences quantum biology, right? Yes. So, but I think about quantum biology, quantum physics, et cetera, just being like nanoscale, tiny scale. So how is our body operating on the scale of electrons and magnetic fields and things that we can't even see really with a microscope, right? And I talk to patients a lot about their redox, right? Their antioxidant potential through electron, the amount of electron transfer they have in the body. And so we obviously discuss grounding regularly. Interestingly, that's probably been my secondary focus, because I see so many people with mitochondrial dysfunction. I can see that just have really low cellular energy. And that manifests in all kinds of different diseases, right? But also a lot of people who have chronic pain syndromes, either arthritis or inflammatory issues or fibromyalgia or whatever. And it's so funny. Whenever you tell someone that putting their feet on the ground for 10 minutes a day will drop their inflammation by 50% and make their blood flow through their body better, they look at you like you're crazy. But I will have to say that my immediate family are my biggest challenge, or have been, right? Just like your dad doesn't want to listen to you. It doesn't matter how many degrees you have, how many podcasts you're on, how many other people respect what you have to say. Like the parents are always the skeptic.
Yeah, they'll easily put you in your place very quickly.
Yeah,
very quickly.
So my mom is amazing, and she'll be 66 this year, and she is not on prescription medication, and she's lean and fit, etc. But she has always had, ever since I can remember in her adult life, had arthritis in her hands, mainly in, this first metacarpal thumb. And it would get so bad that if you would touch her hand, she would recoil, right? Like you couldn't even touch it. It hurt so much. And about 2 years ago for Christmas, I got her this little grounding pad. And I just thought maybe she would use it inside when she was at her desk, playing on her computer or whatever, editing photos. That's what she likes to do. And she ended up putting it in her bed, and where she could rest her feet on it at night. And she called me about a month after she started doing that, and because she didn't believe that it was going to do anything. So the placebo effect was not there. Okay. Yeah. She was like, all right, well, she got me this thing and I'm going to try it, but whatever. And she called me a month after she had been using that. And she said, you're not going to believe this, but the pain in my hands is completely gone, 100% gone. And that was 2 years ago. And, I asked her again yesterday about her hands, and she said, still no pain 2 years later. But it made a believer out of her.
Yeah.
So she ended up getting a grounded bed sheet. She's like, I want your dad to be sleeping on this too. He says he's having the best sleep of his life. Right. Then she has 3 sisters. She gets them all grounded bed sheets. They all start sleeping grounded. And all of them come to family get-togethers telling me like all these changes they're noticing. My grandmother has diabetic neuropathy, and it was so bad that when she sleeps at night, she has so much pain that she'd have to get up in the middle of the night and take a shower to like help the symptoms before she could go back to sleep. Like every night at 3 a.m., getting up to take a shower. No longer has to do that. No longer suffering with neuropathy symptoms. So, and I don't really believe that we all have to turn to technology to get this and gadgets and biohacks to get this kind of benefit. But the interface of our bodies with the charge of the earth is so important and vital that really, no matter how you have to structure your day or your environment to get that, it's beneficial. Yeah.
I totally agree with you.
I also sleep grounded. I love Dr. Laura Conover, and I have her company's Intuition Physician, and she makes beautiful indoor grounding products, but I have mine staked to outside, which I think is optimal.
Yeah, agreed.
And I noticed, I've been training for the first time in my life. I've been doing a lot of strength training in the last 4 months.
Hey, well
done. I'm very, very proud. I've gained, like 15 pounds of muscle in 4 months. But that typically, I went from not barely being able to do 3 push-ups, to
just repping them out now.
So some pretty impressive physical feats. Yeah. But that would have made me sore, right? Like this whole transition, working out so hard, historically has made me sore enough that I would have trouble walking at day 2. And not one single day in this entire journey have I had muscle soreness, which it might not be the grounded sleep. It could be the whole total of everything that I do to stay healthy and support my body's inflammatory response. But it is remarkable how resilient to exercise I have become, and what my recovery is just insane compared to what it used to be. But I really think that sleeping grounded is probably part of it. So
I agree. Unfortunately for me, I can't stake mine out in the ground. So mine's plugged into the wall. And I did note that when I'm using like my little grounding mat, which I use when I'm doing my meditations and stuff like that, or my grounded yoga mat, I get a really good response from that. But if I sleep on it, I don't know whether it's just because of where my room is positioned. Like I've got a main underground train station, literally just on the opposite side of this wall. And my bedroom is on that side. I've had to put my bed on the other side of the room, but I think because I'm plugging it in and right outside where the plug socket is on the wall, right outside is a big electric pylon. There's clearly like a Wi-Fi router thing on it as well. That's clearly just pulling things in, and I'm I'm the weakest link in the chain, and so it's obviously coming through me. But in here, where I'm away from it, and it's plugged in on the other side of the building, and I can sit on it and I can relax on it, I get a much better response. And I notice it, like if I meditate and I don't use the grounding mat when I'm sat on it, I don't go anywhere near as deep. But when I sit on the grounding mat, I'm instantly connected to source, and I'm getting all these downloads, and I just feel the energy is faster, lighter, clearer. Where, and this is all going to sound very woo to people, but I've been doing this since I was 13, so I'm 44 now, so I've been meditating quite a long time. I notice those changes, like I really do. Which is a shame, because I'd love to be able to have a grounding mat on my bed and have that optimization when I sleep. But when I move, because I'm going to be selling this place in April, when I move, that's the first thing that's going to be happening, is a grounding mat on the bed, staked outside in the garden. Kelsey's rules, it's got to be done. And I'm definitely going to be jumping on that bandwagon. It has to happen. And I'll have to buy it from your friend as well, because with all these grounding mats, the same as everything, I want to buy it from somebody that I trust, they know what they're doing. You know, not just a random company that's getting it from, like, I don't know, like Alibaba or something. I'd like it to be an actual proper legit company that I'm getting it from. So I'll have to get the contact from you and get one of theirs. Oh yeah, absolutely. Highly recommend Dr. Conover's products. My mom, who sleeps regularly on a cheap version, right, that she got on Amazon, that she plugs into the wall, came and stayed with me one night and slept in the bed with me. And when she laid down, she said, Kelsey, I feel like I'm vibrating. Like I can feel, I can feel the energy coming from this pad. And I said, I know, it's awesome. But yeah, luckily for us, in this area, it's pretty rural. So we don't have, like, most people don't live by, big cell phone towers or like big other kinds of external energy that might use them as the link to get to the ground. Of course. But I do think about that a lot. That it's not always optimal to sleep grounded. So it really depends on what's around you and even like what's plugged in your room. So I really think it's worthwhile, because that's when our body repairs, right? To do sort of an audit of your sleeping environment and try to make it as optimal as possible. And usually that means having as little electricity transfer around you in general as possible, even to the point of killing the breaker in the bedroom, if you are able to do that. I agree. I was reading whose article was I was reading the other day about how the mitochondria they're EMF seekers, and they're seeking out the natural earth frequencies. And when we're in a room which has got stuff plugged in, even if they're not turned on, the dirty electricity leakage that comes from the sockets, the mitochondria are picking them up. And that's when we get this dysregulated mitochondrial function, even in a room where nothing's actually turned on, it's just been plugged in. And I thought that was fascinating. That's how sensitive the mitochondria can be. Absolutely. It's insane. Absolutely insane. Well, Kelsey, listen, I'm very, very conscious of your time. So we've got like 3 minutes left, and I would love to give the listeners a little bit of a takeaway that they can maybe try. And obviously with the prevalence of metabolic issues and your focus in that area, if you could give 1 or 2 little tips for people that are either pre-diabetic or type 2 or something, or have some form of metabolic dysfunction, whatever the case may be, what would they be? Like, where would you get them to start? Oh, that's not an easy question, but I thought it was. No, to try to synthesize all this into like, what's the one thing? But I tell many patients to sleep like it's your job, right? If you have metabolic dysfunction, chronic inflammation, cancer, heart disease, that repair time at night is so vitally important. And I see many people who are overweight,
have weight loss resistance and they're doing everything else possible, but they're not sleeping. They're not tending the light environment. And remember that sleep comes from your light environment. It's not from supplements. It's not from relaxation techniques. I mean, those things can be helpful, but the base, what programs the hormones that dictate our sleep-wake cycle, comes from morning light and evening darkness. So I really try to encourage every person I meet to make unfiltered, full spectrum sunlight the first light they see every morning, and to block blue light at night, however that looks for them. Either abstinence or blue light blocking glasses or wrapping their TV in orange film. It's more important than most people recognize. Possibly the most important cornerstone of health, right? The light we get. So
I agree. 100%. And you'll know you're getting it right because one of the first things that I noticed was I don't need a coffee. I don't need it. Like, I have it now because I like it, not because I need it. I'm not tired. Like, I wake up and I'm like, let's go. Where normally I'd wake up and like, oh my God, I need a coffee. But now I don't get that at all.
I can relate to that 100%. And even when I was trying to be as healthy as possible before I discovered light, I was drinking the equivalent of like 4 espresso every morning to be able to feel normal. Right. And now I'm so sensitive to caffeine that I can barely tolerate 1 normal cup of coffee. And I bounce out of the bed every morning at 6 a.m.
Like Tigger, just bounding around the room.
And skip right outside and sit right down on the porch and look at that sun and happy as can be. I drink decaf now because I like warm drinks in the morning, but I don't need that caffeine.
Exactly. I don't have caffeinated other than I'll have caffeine before I go to the gym, but it will be like a small amount mixed in with some shilajit or some pine pollen and things like that, just to get this and some black ginger just to get this nitric oxide boost and vasodilation and stuff. But I will have a decaf now because I love the taste of coffee. It's not the fact that I want the hit anymore, but as you say, just having that, and I call it my bliss moment, having that moment where it's just you, your coffee, no one's at you, there's no messages you need to get back to, you just put your phone to one side and you're just there in the light with your coffee. You've had your food first as well, ladies and gentlemen. Please have your food before coffee. And you can just sit and chill for a moment before the day actually truly begins. That's my bliss moment, and I love that. That's one of my favorite things. It really, really is. I love it. And I'm glad that we both do decaf at the same time. It's incredible. So, Kelsey, my darling, again, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So please tell the listeners and the viewers, where can they find you? I'm going to put it all in the show notes anyway, but please let everybody know where they can find you.
So I'm probably most accessible on Instagram. My handle is Kelsey Dexter, MD. Fairly easy to remember. I'm not super active on any social media platform because I'm so busy in real life. I have a website under construction that has the same name, and that maybe will be up in the next few months. But I generally, if you want to contact me, Instagram is probably the best way. Yeah. Amazing.
Well, that's where I'm going to direct everybody. 100%. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. I'm really, really grateful. And I could sit and listen to you talk all day long. I love your accent. I could just sit and listen the whole time. I just want to say thank you for that, my darling, because it's just music to my ears, hearing your accent and seeing your smile. So just thank you for that.
That's so kind. But I feel the same way about you.
Oh, bless you.
These beautiful accents.
I just think I've got some normal core blimey English accent, but I'll take your word for that. I thank you for the praise. I really do. I try and bring my podcaster's voice on when I do these things. I think I'm probably a little bit more cockney when I'm off camera, but I appreciate that. Thank you very much for joining. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions for Kelsey, you can reach out to her on Instagram. You can pop them in the comments below. If any of this has resonated with you, please like, share, subscribe, and all that beautiful stuff. And until our next episode, stay blessed, everybody. And Kelsey, thank you so much, my darling. I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Mark.
Take care. Bye, my darling.
Bye.